January, if your fiscal year is your calendar year, is already spent in maintaining your infrastructure. That'll leave you with 20% to play with for innovative. How do you understand the 80% that you spend and the value it actually brings? And can you explain it to your board? And can you understand what it brings to the industry? And that's where usually I think a lot of IT decision makers become unstuck. I think cloud will, resolve some of the mysteries around that. And over time, with SaaS, software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, network as a service, you'll be able to understand the costs of the components of these and be able to understand the value or non-value so you can make better business decisions. So cloud computing is going to happen, and it's a wonderful opportunity for everybody. Now, in Intel, let me explain this slide to you. So what you have on the left-hand side is what we call CPU. So we're measured in CPUs and the CPU growth. You're going to see tremendous growth over the next 4 to 5 years of the overall CPU expenditure. Now, roughly, to use ballpark figures, we kind of look at about 1.5, 1.6 CPUs on average per server. So by 2014, if you look at the number of CPUs shipped into the market, we're about 27 million. 27 million, if you look, it's about 18, make the math easier for you. It's about 18 million servers will be shipping from roughly around 12 million today. That's just tremendous growth. That's about 70% growth in servers. Now, we're making some big predictions here because we have to build facilities, manufacturing plants. Last year, we announced a $7 billion investment to build 3 superfabs in America, because we believe over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, you're going to see dramatic growth in not only server, but also in client. And that client could be anything that will take a piece of silicon or a CPU or technology, etc. into it. We're making some really big bets. If we get it right, we'll be part of the success of the industry moving forward. If we get it wrong, we're going to be very wrong, and I'll be about as visible as Jose Mourinho right now, or a guy that can't be found. So if I look at the growth then, if we look at the server market, very much you're going to see more or less the same sort of segmentation growing at that particular standard rate. Workstations, high-performance computing, mission critical, but the one area of growth is going to be around cloud services providers. And that would be people like the Facebooks or the Microsofts and the Googles, but also large outsourcing and also people deploying private clouds in industry. And that's going to be a tremendous growth. So there'll be an exponential growth in that particular area on top of the growth there is today. So we've got to understand how can we build technologies and design technologies and work with Cisco to be able to deliver that level of capability so you can deploy it to actually meet your business needs. So there's going to be really good, strong growth. Now, what does that do to you today? We're anticipating that growth. You've got an existing infrastructure. Your existing infrastructure is usually siloed. Now, what you don't want to do is build more and more data centers. If you build more data centers, some of the expense of that data center is going to limit your ability to be able to respond to the market needs. So the one thing you should do is standardize on an open architecture. Number 2, you need to have a virtualization strategy. Now, with some of the players out there, such as Zen, Microsoft, VMware, have virtualization platforms out there today, and they're all running on Intel. So you look at actually consolidating and virtualizing your environment. But not only your server environment, you'll have to look at virtualizing your storage environment. So you're consolidating your infrastructure to maximize the existing framework in which you run your business today. You might have to expand to a new data center. You might have to expand globally. You might have a different data center strategy. And that's okay too. It all depends on the industry sector you're in. So you need to look at your installed base of servers, and you need to decide should you and when should you start deploying. I'm sure all of you have got virtualization into your environment today. Maybe some of you haven't got your Tier 1 applications virtualized. I'm talking to customers around Europe that actually either already have plans or have already started implementing the Tier 1 back-end applications into a virtualized environment. So they're looking at a pool of server capabilities to be able to respond to the needs. And that reduces their cost and drives efficiency. Cloud infrastructure is going to build on that virtual environment. Our particular vision, moving forward, we have to look at where the industry is going, and we have to decide how we're going to play into that by the technologies. So we're going to look at it, you're going to have a federated environment. In other words, if and when you decide that your data center is full and you've maximized the capacity, you may decide to move, either by an internal investment or an external investment, move that to a public cloud. Maybe your non-critical applications. Maybe you move your critical applications out into the public, as soon as we heard from some of the speakers, when it becomes more secure. But it has to be seamless to your users, whether it's outsourced or internally, it has to be seamless. It has to be seen as a ubiquitous, as a unified fabric, as a unified capability. Also has to be automated. If we're going to have to manage all these types of applications that are distributed around in different data centers, then it's going to be hell on earth for you. You've got to make it easy. So we're putting in capabilities to make it far more innovative around the automated side of it, and you're going to see things running dynamically. So we're investing in our technologies, dynamic capabilities around energy, and also about throughput performance, context switching, and also around security. So you're going to see that being automated, so there's less worry for you as you scale out your capability. By 2015, there's going to be 1 billion extra connected devices, or people, sorry, and there's going to be 12 billion devices in the world. And they're consuming data at a tremendous rate. So the level of competition in the world today will increase dramatically, and you need to be able to respond to that with a highly flexible environment. So we've got to make sure, whether using PCs or tablets or netbooks and other types of connected devices, whether they're going to be in the car or the home or in business, you need to make sure that when you're connecting, whether you're connecting to a private cloud or whether you're connecting to a public cloud, you've got to make sure that they're secure, they're client aware, and they're in such a way that you can get the data that you need in a very secure manner. I mean, we all saw on the paper what happened last week, or 2 weeks ago, with Sony and PlayStation, and we also saw what happened in Arizona about a month ago, where about 25,000 email addresses were stolen from Apple's iPad domain within Arizona. And that could be really serious for you running businesses, insofar as your data and information becomes available to people who are going to abuse it. So if we look at that capability, we need to understand that you need a data center strategy, we need to make sure that there's a data center simplification, and we start looking at data center consolidation. If I look at data center strategy, now, all of you have got probably very large back-end siloed legacy type environments, and you need to know how do you actually manage that over to a more mainstream common architecture, and then looking at your dedicated infrastructure for mission critical, and then over time move that to long term. So let me talk about some of the cloud economics and what's happening in the industry. What we have seen in the last number of years is a gradual decline of the IBM's power install base, as people are deciding to migrate away from power and move them onto x86 and Intel architecture. So last year against this year, there's been overall about a 23% decline. If we look at the other RISC-based and legacy-based, it's the SPARC Sun architecture that Oracle has. That's in free fall. And I see more and more and more customers absolutely just turning this off and moving over at a tremendous rate. So we're seeing most of the banks in Wall Street, most of the banks in London, the telcos, everyone is moving away from the SPARC architecture because it's a legacy type environment and people need to move to an open standards architecture. So people are already making that decisions to move over. Why are they moving over? Well, the cost and the dynamics of it. So, you remember that slide I talked to you about where there's a 70% growth in servers? Now, so what we did is we looked at the install base of servers today, we looked at the growth, and we looked at our roadmap and we started costing it out. If we just take that particular growth, which is highly predictive, we work with analysts, we work with customers, and that particular growth is very easy, we believe, to sustain. As a result of that, between the infrastructure today and the infrastructure in 2015, there'll be 45 gigawatts of savings associated with moving that. That's about 45 coal plants. If you look at roughly in savings and efficiency overall, we believe